We live in an age obsessed with outcomes. Numbers, platforms, influence, speed, these are the currencies of our culture. Yet history repeatedly testifies that the most dangerous moment in a person's life is not failure, but unprepared success. Achievement does not create character, it reveals it. It does not transform a person, it unmasks them. And when success arrives faster than character can sustain, collapse is not a possibility, it is an inevitability. Character is not forged on stages, screens, or applause lines. It is formed in the unseen moments where no one is watching, where choices are made without reward, where convictions are tested without witnesses. Long before a person is trusted with visibility, they must be trusted with obscurity. Long before influence is granted, integrity must be proven. The architecture of a life is determined not by its peaks, but by the strength of its foundations. If success were merely about talent, history would be kind. But it is not. It is filled with brilliant minds and gifted individuals undone by the absence of moral weight. Today, we will examine why character must precede success, how it is intentionally built, and why ignoring this order carries consequences that echo far beyond a single lifetime. Success is often misunderstood as a destination, a finish line reached by effort, intelligence, or opportunity. In reality, success is less a reward and more a responsibility. It is a stewardship test that exposes the true condition of the person who holds it. When influence, resources, recognition, or authority increase, they do not improve character, they magnify it. Whatever is already present on the inside becomes more visible, more powerful, and more consequential. This is why success without prior character formation is not merely risky, it is destructive. Many assume that once they arrive, they will become disciplined, humble, generous, or wise. But life does not work in reverse. You do not rise into virtue, you carry virtue upward with you, or you carry its absence. Success functions like pressure applied to a container. If the container is strong, pressure proves its integrity. If it is weak, pressure reveals its fractures. The tragedy is that the fractures often harm not only the individual, but everyone connected to them. Stewardship implies accountability. To be entrusted with success is to be entrusted with impact on people, systems, families, and futures. Authority affects lives. Visibility shapes narratives. Resources influence values. Without character, these gifts become liabilities. Pride replaces humility, expedience replaces truth, self-preservation replaces responsibility, and the very success once pursued becomes the instrument of downfall. Character prepares a person to carry weight. It teaches restraint before power, gratitude before abundance, and discernment before decision-making. Without these internal governors, success accelerates moral drift. What once required effort to resist suddenly becomes easy to justify. Small compromises, once inconsequential, now echo loudly. A lack of character may go unnoticed in obscurity, but success removes concealment. The spotlight does not create flaws, it illuminates them. True preparation for success occurs long before recognition appears. It happens when no applause reinforces the right choice. It happens in consistency without reward, obedience without affirmation, and faithfulness without evidence of progress. These moments are not wasted time, they are training grounds. They teach a person to value truth over outcomes, responsibility over convenience, and long-term consequence over short-term gain. Stewardship also requires understanding that success is temporary, but its effects are not. A decision made under the influence of power can alter lives for generations. This reality demands a moral framework that does not shift with circumstances. Character provides that framework. It anchors a person to principles that remain fixed when pressure mounts and incentives distort judgment. Those who view success as a reward ask, "What do I get?" Those who view it as stewardship ask, "What am I responsible for?" The first mindset breeds entitlement, the second breeds humility. Entitlement assumes exemption from rules. Humility recognizes accountability to higher standards. History consistently favors the latter. Those who endure are not the most gifted, but the most grounded. Character also governs response to failure within success. No one navigates influence without mistakes. Character determines whether failure leads to correction or corruption. Without it, defensiveness replaces repentance, image replaces truth, and denial replaces growth. With it, failure becomes a teacher rather than a terminal event. Success does not test talent nearly as much as it tests restraint. It asks whether a person can say no when they can say yes, remain honest when deception is profitable, and stay grounded when admiration invites arrogance. These decisions are not learned in moments of triumph. They are rehearsed in seasons of preparation. In the end, success entrusted to unformed character is like giving a powerful instrument to an untrained hand. Damage is not a question of if, but when. But success entrusted to a person shaped by integrity, discipline, and humility becomes a force for good, stability, and lasting influence. The order matters, always. Character must come first, because success is not something you merely achieve, it is something you must be able to carry. Everything that is visible is supported by what is invisible. This principle governs architecture, biology, and human lives alike. No structure stands because of what is seen on the surface. It stands because of what is hidden beneath it. In the same way, the outcomes people admire, success, influence, stability, resilience, are not the result of public moments, but of private foundations formed long before recognition arrives. Hidden foundations are built in places no one applauds. They are formed in habits, convictions, and decisions that seem insignificant because they are unseen. Daily integrity, disciplined thinking, moral consistency, and the refusal to compromise when compromise would be convenient, these shape a life quietly. Yet when pressure comes, these unseen elements determine whether a person stands or collapses. Public pressure never creates strength. It only tests what already exists. Many people invest heavily in appearances while neglecting substance. They polish skills, expand networks, and refine presentation, assuming that success is a matter of visibility. But visibility without depth is dangerous. When responsibility increases, shallow foundations cannot sustain the weight. What looked impressive from a distance begins to crack up close. Integrity gaps widen, inconsistencies surface. The cost of neglecting foundations is always paid later and with interest. Private disciplines shape public credibility. A person who learns to tell the truth when lying would be easier is building a foundation. A person who chooses self-control when indulgence is available is laying structural beams. A person who honors commitments when no consequence follows is reinforcing load-bearing walls. These actions rarely produce immediate reward, but they produce long-term stability. When the storms arrive, and they always do, these foundations decide the outcome. Character is not an emergency response, it is a pre-installed system. In moments of pressure, people do not rise to their ideals, they default to their training. What has been practiced in private will manifest in public. If shortcuts are normalized in obscurity, they will be amplified under pressure. If faithfulness is practiced in silence, it will surface in crisis. Hidden foundations also involve worldview. What a person believes about truth, responsibility, and meaning shapes every decision they make. Without a coherent framework, decisions are driven by convenience or emotion. But when convictions are clearly defined, choices become anchored. This stability allows a person to act consistently even when incentives change. Success often alters incentives. Character keeps convictions intact. Time is the great revealer of foundations. You can fake appearance for a season, but you cannot fake substance indefinitely. Life has a way of applying weight, relationships strain, authority tests judgment, resources test values, adversity tests endurance. In each case, the hidden foundation determines whether the visible structure holds. Those who invested early endure longer. Those who neglected preparation scramble when it matters most. The paradox is that the most critical work often feels the least productive. Saying no to temptation produces no immediate evidence. Maintaining integrity in isolation earns no recognition. Honoring principles when shortcuts promise speed feels inefficient. Yet these are the very acts that compound over time. They create a moral reserve that can be drawn upon when pressure peaks. Hidden foundations also cultivate humility. When growth occurs in private, there is less attachment to applause. Success becomes less about validation and more about responsibility. This humility is not weakness, it is clarity. It allows a person to learn, correct course, and receive counsel without defensiveness. Pride grows where foundations are shallow because image must be protected. Humility grows where foundations are deep because truth is valued more than perception. Neglecting hidden foundations often leads to panic-driven decisions. When pressure exposes weakness, reaction replaces reflection. Compromise becomes a survival strategy, but those with strong foundations respond rather than react. They are not governed by urgency because their stability was established long before the crisis. What survives public scrutiny is what was cultivated in private. The visible life is only as strong as the invisible one supporting it. No amount of success can compensate for a weak foundation, and no season of obscurity is wasted if it is used to build one. What is hidden today determines what remains standing tomorrow. The measure of maturity is not how quickly a person can obtain what they want, but how long they can wait without becoming compromised. Delayed gratification is not merely a virtue, it is evidence of internal order. It demonstrates that desire is governed by principle, that impulse is subordinate to purpose, and that the future is valued more than the moment. In a world conditioned for immediacy, the ability to wait has become rare and therefore powerful. Impatience is often disguised as ambition. It speaks in urgent language, insists that delay is waste, and frames restraint as weakness. Yet impatience erodes judgment. It pressures a person to accept shortcuts that trade integrity for speed. What is gained quickly is rarely carried well. When authority, influence, or success arrives before self-mastery, it overwhelms rather than empowers. Delayed gratification trains a person to live beyond emotion. Feelings are real, but they are unreliable decision makers. Maturity is not the absence of desire. It is the discipline to align desire with timing and purpose. Waiting teaches restraint. It builds the capacity to say no to what is permissible in order to say yes to what is necessary. This internal discipline becomes essential when options multiply and consequences expand. There is a difference between waiting passively and waiting faithfully. Passive waiting is stagnation. Faithful waiting is active preparation. It involves growth, learning, refinement, and obedience in the absence of immediate reward. This kind of waiting reshapes ambition. The focus shifts from arrival to readiness. The question becomes not, when will I succeed, but who am I becoming while I wait? Obscurity is one of the most effective classrooms for maturity. In seasons where effort is unseen and progress feels slow, motives are purified. Without applause, a person must decide whether their values are real or performative. Delayed gratification exposes why someone wants success. If the motivation is validation, waiting becomes unbearable. If the motivation is purpose, waiting becomes formative. Short-term thinking seeks relief. Long-term thinking seeks alignment. Delayed gratification strengthens long-term vision. It teaches a person to evaluate choices not by immediate comfort, but by future cost. This perspective becomes critical when success presents options that appear beneficial but carry hidden consequences. Without the discipline of waiting, discernment collapses under pressure. Maturity also requires enduring frustration without losing direction. Waiting is uncomfortable by design. It stretches patience, reveals entitlement, and confronts assumptions. But discomfort is not damage. It is resistance that builds strength. Just as muscles develop under strain, character develops under restraint. The inability to tolerate frustration often signals immaturity, not injustice. Those who cannot wait often try to control outcomes. Control replaces trust. Manipulation replaces obedience. This is how ethical erosion begins, not with major decisions, but with small rationalizations made in haste. Delayed gratification interrupts this pattern. It forces a pause between desire and action, creating space for wisdom to operate. Waiting also develops gratitude. When success is not immediate, progress is noticed. Growth is valued. Small victories are appreciated. This cultivates humility, which becomes essential when greater success arrives. Those who waited are less likely to feel entitled and more likely to steward what they receive responsibly. When success finally comes, it arrives to a person who has already learned self-governance. They are not intoxicated by opportunity because they are not desperate for it. They can evaluate, decline, and prioritize without fear of missing out. Delayed gratification has given them internal freedom. The danger is not in wanting success, it is in wanting it prematurely. Timing matters. Readiness matters. A life that outruns its maturity eventually stumbles. But a life that allows character to set the pace gains stability. Delayed gratification is not denial, it is preparation. It ensures that when success arrives, it is met with wisdom rather than recklessness and strength rather than strain. Talent is often mistaken for substance. It is visible, impressive, and immediately useful. It opens doors, attracts attention, and accelerates opportunity. But talent is morally neutral. It can be used to build or to deceive, to heal or to manipulate. Truth, on the other hand, is stabilizing. It governs direction, sets boundaries, and preserves coherence over time. When talent operates without truth, collapse is only delayed, never avoided. Skill can take a person far quickly, but it cannot keep them there. The world rewards ability, but it trusts consistency. Truth is what creates consistency. It aligns words with actions, intentions with outcomes, and private conduct with public claims. Without this alignment, success becomes a performance rather than a reality. Image replaces substance, and maintaining the illusion becomes more important than honoring the truth. Talent often tempts a person to believe they are exempt from limits. When results come easily, shortcuts feel justified. Accuracy gives way to efficiency. Integrity is reframed as optional. This is how talent becomes dangerous. It whispers that outcomes matter more than process, that success validates behavior, and that effectiveness excuses compromise. Truth stands in opposition to this lie. It insists that how something is done matters as much as what is achieved. Truth creates internal order. It removes the need for constant justification and self-protection. When a person commits to truth, they are freed from the exhausting task of managing appearances. They no longer need to remember which version of events was told to whom. Their life gains coherence. This coherence becomes increasingly valuable as responsibility grows. Complexity increases with success, and only truth can simplify without distorting. Talent without truth produces fragility. A single exposure, a single contradiction, a single ethical failure can undo years of achievement. Truth produces resilience. It may slow progress, but it strengthens foundations. When challenges arise, those grounded in truth can endure scrutiny without panic. They have nothing to hide and nothing to defend. This stability becomes a rare and trusted asset. Truth also governs decision-making under pressure. Talent thrives in favorable conditions, but pressure reveals priorities. When incentives change, truth remains constant. It prevents rationalization. It forces uncomfortable honesty. It may cost opportunities in the short term, but it preserves credibility in the long term. Credibility, once lost, is almost impossible to recover. There is also a relational dimension. Talent impresses people. Truth earns trust. Influence built on talent attracts followers. Influence built on truth sustains relationships. When people believe that words are reliable and motives are transparent, trust deepens. This trust multiplies impact far beyond what talent alone can achieve. It creates loyalty rather than dependence. Truth demands humility because it confronts self-deception. It exposes blind spots, corrects assumptions, and resists ego. Talent feeds pride if left unchecked. Truth restrains it. It reminds a person that ability is a gift, not an entitlement, and that effectiveness does not equal infallibility. This humility keeps a person teachable, correctable, and grounded. Many fear that truth will limit them. In reality, truth protects them. It acts as a boundary that prevents self-sabotage. It filters opportunities, clarifies priorities, and simplifies choices. A commitment to truth reduces options but increases clarity. Fewer choices made with integrity outperform countless choices made in compromise. When success expands, so does temptation. Influence creates access. Access creates opportunity. Opportunity tests values. In these moments, talent offers no guidance. Only truth can. It answers the questions talent cannot. Should this be done? At what cost? For whose benefit? Without these answers, talent becomes a liability rather than an asset. In the end, talent determines how high a person can rise, but truth determines how long they can remain. History is filled with gifted individuals, undone not by lack of ability, but by disregard for truth. The lesson is consistent and unyielding. Talent may open doors, but truth keeps the structure from collapsing. If success is to endure, truth must always outrank talent. Suffering is often viewed as an obstacle to be avoided, an interruption to progress, or a sign of failure. Yet throughout life, suffering functions as one of the most effective instruments for shaping depth, clarity, and endurance. It exposes weaknesses that comfort conceals and reveals dependencies that success often hides. While talent can attract opportunity and ambition can generate momentum, suffering forges the inner strength required to sustain both. Adversity strips away illusions. It removes the false confidence built on circumstance and replaces it with a more grounded awareness of limitation. When external supports are removed, a person discovers what actually sustains them. This discovery is not comfortable, but it is necessary. Without it, success breeds arrogance. With it, success is carried with humility. Suffering also clarifies priorities. Under pressure, trivial concerns lose their urgency. What once seemed essential is reevaluated. Values are tested not by statements, but by endurance. When something is costly, commitment is revealed. This refinement is critical for leadership and influence. Those who have not endured hardship often confuse preference with principle. Those who have suffered learn the difference. There is a refining aspect to adversity that cannot be replicated by instruction. Wisdom gained secondhand lacks the weight of lived experience. Suffering engraves lessons into the character. It teaches patience not as a concept, but as a necessity. It teaches empathy not as an ideal, but as a response. This depth becomes invaluable when success places a person in positions affecting others. Trials also confront self-reliance. They reveal the limits of control and the illusion of self-sufficiency. In seasons of ease, it is easy to believe that outcomes are solely the result of effort. In hardship, that belief collapses. This collapse, while unsettling, is corrective. It reorients the person toward humility, gratitude, and dependence on principles greater than circumstance. Suffering has a way of slowing life down. In that slowing, reflection becomes unavoidable. Questions surface that success often suppresses. Why am I doing this? What truly matters? What am I willing to sacrifice? These questions recalibrate ambition. They prevent success from becoming hollow. Without such recalibration, achievement can outpace meaning. One of the most significant outcomes of suffering is discernment. Pain sharpens perception. It teaches the difference between what is urgent and what is important, between noise and substance. Those who have endured difficulty are less easily impressed and less easily deceived. They recognize patterns. They anticipate consequences. This discernment protects them when success offers seductive but dangerous opportunities. Suffering also builds endurance. Endurance is not passive tolerance. It is sustained faithfulness under strain. This quality is essential for long-term impact. Many can start strong, but few can remain steady. Adversity trains perseverance. It strengthens resolve. It teaches a person to continue without immediate reward. This endurance becomes a stabilizing force when success introduces volatility. There is also a moral dimension to suffering. Hardship exposes ethical fault lines. Under pressure, values are tested. Will a person compromise to escape pain or remain faithful to principle? Each choice leaves a mark. Over time, these marks shape character. Those who endure without surrendering integrity emerge strengthened. Those who trade values for relief weaken future resolve. Importantly, suffering tempers judgment. Those who have walked through difficulty tend to lead with compassion rather than condemnation. They understand complexity. They are less quick to assign blame and more willing to extend patience. This maturity enhances leadership. Authority exercised without compassion becomes oppressive. Suffering humanizes influence. Suffering does not automatically produce growth. It can harden as easily as it can refine. The difference lies in response. When adversity is met with reflection rather than resentment, it becomes transformative. When it is met with humility rather than bitterness, it becomes instructive. The same fire that destroys can also purify. In the preparation for success, suffering is not an enemy. It is an instructor. It trains the inner life for the weight of future responsibility. It teaches lessons that prosperity cannot. Those who embrace its refining work emerge with depth that applause cannot manufacture. When success finally comes, they carry it with steadiness, gratitude, and restraint, shaped not by ease, but by endurance. True freedom is often misunderstood as independence from restraint. In reality, freedom that precedes discipline quickly becomes chaos. Accountability is not a limitation placed on growth. It is the structure that makes growth sustainable. Before a person can be trusted with autonomy, they must demonstrate faithfulness under authority. This order is not arbitrary. It is essential. Accountability reveals whether a person can be trusted when their preferences are challenged. Anyone can perform well when fully in control. The test comes when direction, correction, or boundaries are imposed. A teachable spirit under oversight is one of the clearest indicators of future reliability. Those who resist accountability early often misuse autonomy later. Submission to principles, counsel, and correction develops internal alignment. It trains a person to value truth over ego and growth over comfort. Without this alignment, authority becomes self-serving. Power without accountability amplifies insecurity. It turns leadership into control rather than stewardship. Learning to operate within boundaries refines judgment. Boundaries force prioritization. They require discernment. They expose impulses that need restraint. This refinement is critical preparation for leadership, where decisions affect others and consequences multiply. Those who have not learned restraint under supervision often impose unnecessary restrictions when they gain power, projecting unresolved issues onto others. Accountability also protects against self-deception. Everyone has blind spots. Without external perspective, those blind spots become liabilities. Counsel provides clarity, correction offers course adjustment, feedback, though uncomfortable, prevents drift. Success removes many natural correctives. Accountability must be intentionally maintained. Those who reject it early often lack it when they need it most. There is a difference between accountability imposed and accountability embraced. Imposed accountability breeds compliance. Embraced accountability cultivates maturity. When a person seeks counsel, invites correction, and submits to evaluation, growth accelerates. Pride resists scrutiny. Humility welcomes it. The latter is essential for sustained influence. Accountability builds trust. People trust those who answer to something beyond themselves. When authority is visibly anchored to principles and oversight, confidence grows. This trust expands influence. Autonomy without accountability breeds suspicion. People may follow out of necessity, but not out of respect. Correction is one of the most formative aspects of accountability. It reveals how a person handles failure. Defensive reactions signal insecurity. Reflective responses signal maturity. Those who can receive correction without resentment are capable of learning. Those who cannot are limited by their own fragility. Accountability also tempers ambition. It slows impulsive decisions. It requires justification, explanation, and alignment with shared values. This process filters reckless ideas and refines promising ones. Many failures attributed to bad luck are actually the result of unchecked autonomy exercised too early. As responsibility increases, the form of accountability changes, but it should never disappear. The higher a person rises, the fewer people feel free to challenge them. This makes early formation under authority even more critical. Those who learned accountability early are more likely to preserve it later, intentionally surrounding themselves with truth-tellers rather than admirers. Autonomy gained without accountability often leads to isolation. Isolation distorts perspective. Decisions become reactive. Ego fills the vacuum left by counsel. Accountability prevents this drift by keeping a person connected, grounded, and responsive. Accountability also reinforces ethical consistency. When actions must be explained, motives examined, and decisions reviewed, integrity is strengthened. This consistency becomes a stabilizing force. It allows others to predict behavior, rely on judgment, and collaborate with confidence. Before someone is ready to lead independently, they must demonstrate that they can be led. This is not weakness, it is preparation. Submission trains discernment, humility, and responsibility. It ensures that when autonomy is granted, it is exercised with wisdom rather than impulse. In the end, accountability is not the enemy of freedom, it is its foundation. Those who learn to walk within boundaries before walking alone are far more likely to walk steadily when the path widens. Authority entrusted to a person formed under accountability becomes constructive rather than corrosive. The order matters. Accountability must come before autonomy. Here is the expanded Keynote 6 at approximately 700 words with no headings, written to remain consistent in tone, depth, and theological philosophical style with the rest of the speech. If you're ready, you can now ask for Keynote 7 key or request the full compiled speech. Yes, once all keynotes are complete. Every life is governed by perspective. What a person believes about time, purpose, and consequence silently shapes every decision they make. When perspective is limited to the immediate, choices are driven by urgency, comfort, and visibility. When perspective is expanded beyond the present moment, decisions are filtered through meaning, responsibility, and consequence. An eternal perspective does not remove a person from the world, it anchors them within it. Temporal thinking asks, what works now? Eternal thinking asks, what lasts? This distinction is subtle but decisive. Many choices that appear beneficial in the short term carry hidden costs that only surface over time. Without a broader frame of reference, those costs are ignored. An eternal perspective restores weight to decisions. It recognizes that actions echo beyond immediate outcomes, and that influence carries long-term responsibility. Success often compresses time. It creates urgency, accelerates opportunity, and multiplies options. In such an environment, reflection is easily sacrificed. Eternal perspective resists this compression. It slows decision-making not through hesitation, but through discernment. It insists that not every opportunity should be seized, and not every path that appears profitable is worth pursuing. An eternal perspective also redefines value. Recognition, status, and accumulation lose their power when measured against permanence. This does not diminish ambition, it refines it. The question shifts from how much can be gained to what kind of legacy is being built. This shift protects against exploitation, manipulation, and excess. It places people above outcomes and principles above profit. One of the greatest dangers of success is moral amnesia, the gradual forgetting of why boundaries existed in the first place. Eternal perspective preserves memory. It keeps first principles in view. It reminds a person that authority is borrowed, not owned, and that every role is temporary. This humility stabilizes leadership. It prevents entitlement from taking root and arrogance from distorting judgment. Eternal perspective also governs response to injustice and delay. When results are not immediate or when integrity appears costly, short-term thinking becomes resentful. Eternal thinking remains steady. It trusts that faithfulness has value beyond visibility. This trust sustains perseverance when recognition is absent and outcomes are uncertain. Decisions shaped by eternal perspective are often misunderstood. They may appear inefficient, overly cautious, or unambitious. Yet over time, they reveal coherence. They build trust, consistency, and depth. These qualities compound quietly, outlasting trends and surviving transitions. This perspective also brings clarity in suffering. Pain is no longer interpreted solely as loss, but as part of a larger process. This does not minimize hardship, it contextualizes it. Meaning transforms endurance. Without it, suffering breeds bitterness. With it, suffering produces resilience and insight. Eternal perspective restrains retaliation and pride alike. When life is viewed through a longer lens, personal offense loses its dominance, vindication becomes less urgent, humility becomes more natural. The need to win every argument or protect every image fades. Energy is redirected toward what truly matters. It also shapes how success is released. Those governed by the present cling to influence. Those governed by eternity steward it. They know when to lead, when to delegate, and when to step aside. This wisdom preserves institutions and relationships beyond individual tenure. Perhaps most importantly, eternal perspective integrates character and success into a unified whole. Character is no longer a means to an end, it is the end. Success becomes secondary to faithfulness. Achievement becomes meaningful only insofar as it aligns with purpose that transcends time. In a world driven by immediacy, eternal perspective is a quiet rebellion. It refuses to be rushed by pressure or seduced by applause. It measures life not by visibility, but by significance. It asks not how high a person rises, but how firmly they are anchored. When decisions are governed by what outlasts the moment, success loses its power to corrupt. Character remains intact because it is rooted in something greater than outcome. This is how a life gains coherence, influence gains legitimacy, and success gains meaning that endures long after the moment has passed.